name is Hammurabae, and today I will be teaching you how the political mechanics in Millennium Dawn work, as the first part of a series aimed at helping players learn to use this fantastic mod. For anyone coming from vanilla, or most other mods, the political system will look intimidating, but if you understand the basics, I promise it will be easy to comprehend. Modern political systems are complicated, and the game does reflect that, with a variety of political options at your disposal. The amount of options you have creates for a true sandbox experience and allows one to rebuild a nation into anything they desire. Let's get into it. The first part of understanding Millennium Dawn's political system is the parties and movements screen. As you can see, it gives you a lot of options. The basic groupings are Western Outlook, which are all some variants of market-based democracies which align themselves with the West. The Emerging Outlook, which includes non-Western ideologies such as communism, socialism, and a few other options which align with the East. Next is Salafism, which includes different types of extremist militant Islam. The non-aligned subset includes a mixture of various ideologies which don't really fit into any other category, but are always interesting, so make sure to take a look at them. Lastly, there's the nationalist grouping, which includes fascist, military, and monarchist parties. All of these groupings are important to keep in mind because they will have a large impact on how other countries interact with you and how you interact with other countries. Next to a lot of individual parties, you may notice these two buttons. They are a mechanic that will either grow or lower a party's power. It's important to note that it will only draw it from other parties within the same movement. So for example, if we boost the FDP, we will take power from these parties, and nothing will change within the parties of the other movements. This means the overall percent of the Western Outlook would remain the same, only shifting which party within it has more power. Each time you use this, it will only raise the party's power or reduce it by 2% for 100 political power, so be careful with such a costly tool. Now that we have covered the parties and movements, it's time to look closely at the overarching ideological pie chart that we all know from vanilla. When you look at the daily change, you will notice a lot of modifiers affecting movement change. An important thing to note is that any first world nation, primarily European nations but a few others as well, gets a flat 0.01 increase to non-aligned and decreases emerging outlook by 0.03. This makes it harder to switch to other ideologies. The neighbors you have bordering you also have an effect. If you have Western neighbors, that will increase over time. Usually nations will border a number of ideologies, especially as the game progresses, so be prepared for that. Your economic cycle is something that we will be covering in the economic tutorial video, but it's important to understand that if your economy goes below stable growth, it will cause the popularity of your current party's movement to decrease. This makes sense because people tend not to like political parties that cause the economy to fail. Lastly, there is influence. Millennium Dawn allows you to spend political power and influence other countries. However, the AI will also do this to you and will. If another country has sizable influence over you, it will cause their ideology to grow in your political scene. Internal factions are a hugely important and decisive part of Millennium Dawn as they show who has the most influence in your nation's halls of power. What we will be looking at specifically is how they influence the different movements and therefore parties' popularity. First off, we have the international bankers, who provide a 0.01 increase to Western support. Second, we have industrial conglomerates that provide a 0.01 increase to emerging outlook support. And lastly, we have the military that provides a 0.02 increase to the nationalist outlook. Therefore, if you are looking to become a specific outlook or party, this is a tool for you to do so, although it is a very expensive one political power-wise, as changing that costs anywhere from 1,000 to 1,600 political power. An important thing to note about corruption, despite its hugely negative effects, is that it does have one upside. Each level of corruption gives you 0.2 political power daily, which means at max corruption level, you actually gain 2 political power. This is something to understand because it means that if you're trying to get rid of a large portion of your corruption at once, it's more efficient to save power and get rid of multiple levels at once. It also means that if you need to gain a lot of political power very quickly, corruption actually could be a tool for that, though it does cause a lot of very negative effects. Expenditures will be more fully covered in the economic tutorial video, but for now we will focus on one important aspect of them: political power gain. Administration is the cheapest way to get some extra political power for relatively low cost. Boosting any of these will cost you money, but most nations can afford at least some increases. A maxed out administration slot will grant you 0.5 political power every day. Military spending causes no change at all for political power, so it's not important. Internal security actually does the opposite and reduces political power gain by up to 0.5. Education budget also reduces political power by up to 0.4 when at max. Healthcare increases political power gain by up to 0.25 when fully funded. Lastly, social spending. This expenditure also increases political power gain and when maxed out increases political power by 0.3. This is important to note because political power is important in this mod and one must understand the costs and benefits of changing expenditure levels. Foreign influence is a feature of Millennium Dawn that allows you to use your political power to have control over other nations. This is easier for smaller ones generally speaking. This screen shows which nations have spent power or other resources to get a measure of influence. On the right you can see what it's used for. The first one is spread influence, which is what directly gets you the influence you need for further actions. The other two ways to get influence without political power are economic aid, which results in you using money instead, and military aid, which will have you send them supplies from your stockpile for influence. Once you have gotten yourself some influence, you can use it in some very powerful and useful ways. Manipulating politics is what allows you to actively make their government similar to your current parties. For example, if you are a Western Outlook nation and click the button, they will get 7% more Western Outlook. This allows you to make a country into your own ideology. Once the targeted nation has the same party as you, you are able to puppet them after getting 80% influence. If you don't want to wait for an election to happen, you can also start a coup if you have greater than 30% influence. A lot of players wonder why it's so hard to go to war in this mod, so let me take a moment to discuss this. On Millennium Dawn, you require high world tension to normally declare war, and for democracy, your options are even more limited. The easiest way to get around this is to change your foreign intervention laws. For democracies, the farthest you can go is global interventionism, which allows you to declare war on any nations that create world tension. For example, Turkey declares war on Iraq, thus generating world tension. This means that a democracy would be able to then justify on them and declare war. For nationalist nations or emerging outlook countries, they can go a step further to neo-imperialism. This allows them to justify on anyone they want and go to war at their leisure. Let's now take a look at the political decisions most nations have in Millennium Dawn. Retiring a leader allows a party to put someone else in charge. This gives no real bonus, and most replacements do have a blank character portrait, though some interesting ones can show up. Propaganda campaigns allow you to make a political movement to get more powerful and speeds up your ability to switch to another party or ideology. However, there is a 25% political power reduction while doing this, so be careful. Lastly, emergency elections causes an election to be immediately held without waiting for the next scheduled election. This can be useful if you just don't want to wait. One thing that is very important to understand in this mod is NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. This is a military alliance created after the end of World War II to dissuade the Soviet Union from interfering in the West. It is still alive today, although the USSR is now gone. In this game, it is important to understand this because if you attack one of its members, the rest will join the war as well. Later game, you may be able to deal with this, but in the beginning, no nation can deal with this alliance, so plan your moves carefully. If you want a game without it for any reason, you can cancel in the starting menu by going to Settings, finding the NATO setting, and changing it to Off. Be warned, this will cause a number of new alliances to be created, so be careful. The EU mechanics in this game are complex and detailed, and frankly will require a video of their own, which I may create in the future. The important thing to understand is that the EU takes a portion of nations' political power and money. If you are playing an EU country, you will also get bombarded with EU votes, which you can either ignore or actively promote or deny based on what you're going for. Each EU country has access to the focus tree, which allows you to influence the direction of the EU and pick up a bit of political power. If you want to leave, you need to go for Article 50, which will allow you to start the process of leaving. This won't immediately happen, so if you plan to do this, it's best to get the ball rolling earlier rather than later. One last thing to note is that some industrial decisions can give you political power. Sometimes 100 and sometimes 200, though many nations get none. Hover over the check mark to see if you get any or not. I can't find any information on what dictates which nations get it or not, though I have seen in my own games that it will appear sometimes for nations that do not have it in the beginning. This concludes the first installment of this Millennium Dawn tutorial series. I love this mod and hope that these videos will help many of you who are intimidated by such a large and complex mod. Once you understand the basics, it becomes easy to play and enjoy. I will see you soon in the next tutorial video on the economic aspects of the game. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy it.